Hey there, Business for Unicorns podcast listeners. This is Mark, and I'm here to tell you about an awesome free resource on businessforunicorns.com. If you ever find yourself feeling frustrated with your training gym because you know that there are all sorts of things you could work on, but you're not really sure how to prioritize, you don't know what's the most important thing to work on or what order you should be tackling your priorities, well, now is the time to go to businessforunicorns.com, click the button, and fill out our free self-assessment. With the Ultimate Training Gym Owner Report Card, you will gain immediate clarity on just where to be focusing your attention to create more positive impact on your community, to drive more revenue and take-home income, and to do it all with less stress and more peace of mind. So go to businessforunicorns.com, click the button, fill out that free self-assessment, and start building a business and life you love today.
Fitness business nerds, what's up? Welcome to another episode of the Business for Unicorns podcast. And today I'm here with another one of our magical Unicorn Society members, Jason Giles. What's up, Jason? How are you, my friend?
Hey, Michael. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm so good. So for those of you who don't know Jason Giles is the kind of founder and owner of Iron Monkey Strength in Long Island, New York. So just outside of the city. And you've been in Unicorn Society for how long, my friend?
3 years, actually. I was thinking about this yesterday. 3 years.
3 years. And you opened your brick and mortar just over 2 years ago, right?
That's correct, yeah.
Congrats, my
2
friends.
years.
Yeah. So just tell everyone a little bit about Iron Monkey Strength, why you started it, what makes it such a magical place.
Right. So I started it probably for a reason a lot of other trainers start their own business. They were dissatisfied with what it's like to work in a big box gym and have an idea on how it could be better. And I really wanted to create a space for people where we could help the community be better, healthier, and at the same time elevate what we do as fitness professionals. I firmly believe we can do better.
Yeah. Well, fantastic. I know you've, even since we've been working together the last 3 years, I've seen you really kind of push the envelope in terms of innovating on the model and trying to make your space really unique and stand out in your market. So you're doing that, my friend. Congrats. I mean, even just making it past the 2-year mark in this business with a brick and mortar is tough. I know you've been in the game longer, but just having an actual storefront for 2 years is impressive. So bravo.
Yeah, in a global pandemic too.
Exactly.
Let's not forget that.
Exactly. Yeah, you get bonus points. You get bonus points for that. So there's so
scars.
Many,
what I get is scars.
Yeah, scars and wounds. we all have them. Mm-hmm. Well, today we decided we're going to do this format today. We decided we're going to talk about 4 things. 2 are what I'm going to call shorthand. I'm going to call them fails. So we're going to talk about 2 fails and 2 wins in your first 2 years in business. Right, I think that's it's almost poetic, right? So I think, and we'll spend a few minutes on each. But I think it's useful for our listeners out there who, you know, Jason's been in the game much longer than 2 years, but has his physical location that long, and in your first 2 years, you learn a lot. There's a lot of trial and error. There's a lot of things that you try and is immediate success. A lot of things, more things you try and don't work, and you keep iterating and iterating. And you're probably at this point still iterating and don't have solutions to some areas that you're happy with. So let's start with the fails. And these are kind of soft fails. These aren't like giant ones. But the one thing that we talked about was one of your first employees you decided to put on salary. So kind of talk a little bit about that decision and how it's been going.
Yeah, I'm the only person invested in my business, and I was all alone, and I really wanted someone to work with, to bounce ideas off of, to be my partner in crime, but at the same time I didn't want to give over ownership or control, so I hired someone I had worked with back at Lifetime, and this guy Jesse, he's a great guy, he's a friend, and I decided to salary him in order to win him over. And in retrospect, it seemed like a great idea at the time, and like I could help this guy do something he's going to enjoy more, and at the same time bring on a valuable person talent wise and pay him, and we'll really move this thing along. And now, now I look at it and I go, wow, I didn't need to do that. I probably could have paid him hourly, and Well, you don't know until you know, I guess, with that kind
Exactly.
of thing. Like when the cash started to get lower and lower, and when business got slow, it was like, why am I paying all this money for someone and there's like nothing to do?
Yeah.
You're basically babysitting the shop.
Yep. Yeah. Well, you're not alone, Jason. I mean, it's a tough call to make because I can totally see the desire to bring someone on salary so you have a partner in crime. I think that really makes sense. That resonates. A lot of folks when they first start really wish to have that kind of person by their side to work out things with. And frankly, I don't know that I ever would have started Mark Fisher Fitness without Mark Fisher. And I think he says the same, right? That we needed each other as partners. And I bet Pete and Eric actually say the same. Like there's something about partnership that's really appealing. So you don't feel like you're in it alone. Someone can reality test your ideas. You know, the more brains, the better. So that pull on that idea is very strong for me. And I think you're right that you might have been able to accomplish the same without throwing so much cash out the door, right? And not to say that,
absolutely. Looking at it, that 100%. Looking at it, I could have saved a lot of money and still probably gotten the same production and the same. You just don't know, though. I think I was lonely, to be honest.
Yeah. No, that's true. And like, in some cases we have to put money down and pay for that kind of partnership, right? It's cool. And you were also lucky that you came in with some some cash in the bank to help bankroll your first few years, but not everyone has that ability. So it sounds like, the lesson learned for our dear listeners is that if you're in that position and you're trying to hire your first few staff, that, consider whether or not you can keep them on hourly as long as possible. And that way, the amount you're paying them ebbs and flows with the business. And if you're getting busier, you're paying them more and they're there more. And if you're less busy, they're not there as much and you're paying them less. But to have to pay them when you don't have the business there to match, especially during the uncertainty of a global pandemic, right? That was a real lesson learned. Yeah, it was a real lesson learned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huge. And you guys had told me, I told both of you, and I remember you telling me, Michael, you were like, I really think this is a super risky idea.
Yeah.
And I think Mark said the same thing, and I went for it.
Yeah,
so,
that's it. You got to learn your own lessons, right? I mean, like coaches and people who mentors like us, we can only tell you so much. Sometimes you have to just learn by yourself, and just learn by doing. And I think it's useful. It's useful. It might cost you a few dollars in some cases, but it's a useful lesson.
I'm stubborn. That's my problem. I'm stubborn.
Yeah. Well, yeah. That's also that quality can also be really useful when running a business. Because it takes real persistence. Well, the second topic we're going to talk about, this is kind of another kind of lesson learned in the first few years, is there's been a few times when you've tried to do like outdoor events. You're at a space where there's lots of cars driving by and like other stores nearby. You're trying to like drum up some leads by doing some outdoor events, and a lot of them, several of them, just hadn't worked out for you. So, what are some lessons you've learned about trying to do outdoor events in your community? What would you do again? What would you not do again?
Well, I think first of all, it's great if you have a backup plan because weather is not going to cooperate more than likely. That's what I've learned is that I will have a beautiful day the day before, and the next day the rain's going to come, the sky opens up, the wind blows hard, and it's just not going to work out.
Yeah.
We host this event twice a year as part of a Strong First affiliate, the Tactical Strength Challenge. It's a little bit of a competition, and it opens up our gym to outside people can register for this thing and take place, and they can kind of see our gym and get a vibe for our community, which is super important. And it's been a big win despite the fact that the weather didn't cooperate. It's just like you were saying, we're on Franklin Avenue and we get a ton of traffic up and down. So just from a visual point of view, it might make people more curious, like, oh, what's going on? They're doing something exciting, and they'll want to stop by and say hi. So that's what we were hoping to bank on. And, the big lesson is, like, have a backup plan. And maybe, like, we did hire a videographer for one of them, and I think that paid off because even though it was indoors, we were able to get some good video shots of what's going on and use that to put that out on the interwebs and maybe gather some clout, as they say.
Yeah, I mean, I think those are both great takeaways. Like, I'll even add one. So you said, make sure there's a backup plan if you're doing something outside, whether that backup plan is tents or moving indoors or something. I think that's huge. Just the logistics can be a lot. And two, make sure you're recording it, because not everyone's going to drive by that day while it's happening, right? Not all of your members will be able to make it. And that kind of video, whether it's photos or actual video footage, is priceless. Just people outside having fun with a large community of people working out hard, challenging each other. I mean, that is just priceless content. Though one more I'll add for producing outdoor events or community events at all is that you need to start planning twice as far in advance as you think. Right. I've seen that not just for you, but Michael, I've seen that for everybody.
Everything.
That's true for everything.
I feel like everything.
Yeah.
Like months in advance.
It's true.
Seriously.
It's true. And I think, for me, the outdoor events is such an important one because you're investing so much time and energy. If you're doing this outdoor event during the day, often you're closing the gym for part of the day. You're renting tables and chairs and or tents. You're getting balloons. You're getting food. You're partnering with other local businesses. So not only do you need lots and lots of time to make all that happen, right? But you also need lots of time for people to get on their calendar. You need lots of time to there's so much logistics and to get out invitations, because this event is useless unless you get a lot of new people there. Unless you turn a lot of strangers into friends that day, it's like, why even bother with the headache? And so I just think the planning ahead is so huge. I think minimum 6 weeks, right? Like minimum 6 weeks to do an event like this.
Yeah, I would say in my head it's 2 months.
Yep.
That's like the magic. Like, give yourself some room to push the ball forward. Get that momentum in the right direction. And then if you have a buffer, if you forget something, you can go back and maybe, because you're going to probably forget something.
Yeah, totally.
That's just reality.
Yeah, and you get better and better at these over time. And I think you get better and better at turning them into valuable lead generation events. Right, when you can partner with other people in the community and have lots of email lists all sending invitations, people bringing friends and coworkers and family members, right? This can be a huge lead generation event depending on what you're offering. But I think it really requires lead time. So I think those are great lessons learned. Let's switch gears to some wins, right? So also in these last 2 years, you've had a ton of wins. You wouldn't be here if you didn't have a ton of wins. And we want to talk today about kind of just 2 specific wins you've had. One is about meetings. So you've had a relatively small team, just a handful of you, but I know you've been through quite a journey with meetings, which early on, if I remember correctly, were, we'll meet when we can. Right, we'll meet when we can. We're all in the space a lot, and you've moved to something that's much more structured, much more organized, and it's paid off time and time again. So just talk to me a little bit about your journey with meetings, staff meetings.
Well, for a while, my meeting was just me by myself, and so it didn't have to have meetings. But once I brought Jesse on, like you said, we would have a lot of time in the space when we weren't busy and we could talk about things. But then when we got busy, that became haphazard. And what we would talk about would be whatever was on our mind at the time, which is probably a fire that needs to get put out or some sort of emergency rather than some more logistic things or underlying things that would be important to get to. And once we got busy enough that we weren't really talking as much, that was when I talked to you about it, and you were like, you need to block off the time and make it sacred time for the two of you to meet up and talk about things. And I started with that and also used a structured meeting style with one of the spreadsheets you guys gave us, so I could go through and make sure we hit these certain topics, or at least prioritize the important ones and hit things that we haven't talked about. It could be as simple as talking about inactive members, or it could be going over KPIs, any of the things that aren't necessarily emergencies, but are really important to moving your business forward.
Yeah, I mean, you've said it so well, Jason. I imagine some of our listeners are like, yeah, that's what we did too, right? Because so often early on, when you're new and maybe not that busy, there's lots of time to chat about stuff. Then as you get busier, there's less and less time unless you make the time. And, meetings without an agenda are almost always a waste of time, right? Because meetings without an agenda means you just get together and then you talk about whatever's on your mind. And whatever's on your mind...
Especially with me.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's not even specific to you though.
ADD.
Yeah.
ADD. It's bad.
Well, especially if you know that about yourself, it's like you know that if you sit down and have a conversation, it's going to be about whatever is just on your mind. And frankly, you're not alone here. Whatever is on our mind is rarely the most important thing. It's rarely the most important thing for the business. So having some structure in the meeting where you're talking about, are we making money? Are we getting enough leads?
Yeah.
Are our clients having a good experience? Who left us this week and why? Right? Can we pay the bills? Right? If you're not sitting down,
and that's the stuff I don't want to talk about.
Yeah.
I'm a dreamer. I'm a service guy.
Yep.
I don't want to talk about the numbers. I don't want to talk about sales. I don't want to talk about.
Yep.
I don't want to talk about my bank account.
Yep.
So or KPIs or any of that stuff. But I'm learning to be more comfortable in it, despite the fact that the creative side of me is like, bleh.
Totally. Yeah, 100%. And, Jason, I think you are the majority of people who start gyms are people who are the dreamers. They love the fitness. They love the program design. They love being with clients every day. And so that's even more of a reason why when you have meetings with team members, you teach them how to think about the business. You teach them the most important things in the business is that we're getting lots of new people through the door. We're keeping them. They're having a good experience. When they leave, we learn from that to learn to keep them longer. Right? I mean, and that's what a meeting should be structured on. And since you've done that, I know your conversations, with your kind of number two there have gotten so much more productive.
Absolutely, and it talks him off the ledge because he'll sometimes think about what happened most recently. Maybe somebody left us for whatever reason, or they've stopped coming as frequently. And then by looking at the big picture and looking at the numbers, what they really are, I'm like, it's really not as bad as you think it is. If we break down this percentage, we can see that was like, 1%, and we could just follow up with that person. They didn't necessarily ghost us. We should follow up with them.
Yeah, that's
simply.
Huge. Yeah, that's huge. Yeah, I mean, what a great lesson learned. And to learn early, right, in these first 2 years is that, meetings are important. They help us talk about the stuff we don't want to talk about. And they also just improve communication amongst your team. So you have more and more team members. They'll feel more connected to, the mission and the progress of the business. Yeah. Anything else to say there about meetings?
Even with one of my coaches, when I met with him, Robert, I started meeting with him weekly. It was an opportunity for him to tell me things that he was satisfied or dissatisfied with, and to connect and discuss what's going on. Because sometimes he's a part-time coach. He wouldn't be here when certain decisions were made. He doesn't know what's going on. So we could recap on that and bring him up to speed. And I've noticed that's had a huge effect on morale, which I think is really important.
Yeah, good for you. That's awesome. Cool. So one last topic. So we've done 2 fails, 1 win. We got our second win here. So the second win we want to talk about, which was pricing. So you mentioned earlier that you felt like this has been a real win to kind of adjust your pricing over the last 2 years. And I'll let you tell the story. So what have you done and what have you learned?
But prior to the pandemic, I was planning to do a small group training or large group training format. When the pandemic hit and I was shut down and I was bleeding cash, I reevaluated my business, made a big pivot away from group training to one-on-one training because I needed money bad. And also our occupancy was really hit hard. We could only have 2 or 3 people in the space per hour. And I was like, there's no way with a small group training pricing structure that this was going to work. So I made a pivot to a one-on-one training, a little hybrid kind of model. And at first, we did this pricing with a large ask in the beginning. So the first month would cost $400 or $500, and the second month would be $650, and the third month $650, and whatever. And we got a lot of pushback on that because it was a big commitment financially at an uncertain time. Yeah. So after about a year of trying to run that model, which we did okay on it wasn't terrible. A lot of people at Business for Unicorns were talking about bi-weekly billing, and I had this idea of breaking down the cost of the one-on-one training and spreading it out over 6 months along with our supervised training membership model, and sort of creating like a layaway for personal training is how I kind of look at it. And spreading it out over 6 months was huge because it creates this great buffer, 1. 2, they're only going to pay $200 every 2 weeks, so that's like $100 a week. I'm like, that's a night out by yourself in Manhattan, $100. So just come to the gym 3 times and skip that one night out in Manhattan, and you'll be good to go.
Right.
And
that's one out.
What we noticed
if you don't drink.
Yeah, true. That's true. At least half of that's parking if you're driving in. But what we noticed in running this, we've only been running the bi-weekly 6-month commitment model since January, is that we get a lot less of the, wow, that's a lot of money up front, and a lot more of the, okay, let's do this. And so just a lot more conversions right off the bat, a lot less of the, let me go talk to my partner or my other person that might make financial decisions or be my way out of this commitment.
Yeah.
And that's been tremendous.
Good for you. Good for you, my friend. I think here's the thing is that your original idea of starting people's memberships with what I refer to as like a very high barrier offer, right? We've often talked about like a low barrier offer or trial, excuse me, as being a cheaper way to start. And you were like, no, I'm going to do the opposite for a little while. And that's not wrong, right? I think there's some models and some markets where you can get away with that. In fact, at Mark Fisher Fitness, we have a program, Snatch in 6 weeks, which we've been doing, some people know, for more than a decade. And, it costs about $1,000 for 6 weeks, right? And some people start with that. Some people come to us and will do that first. But I think it's a special kind of person who's willing to throw that much money at fitness for a company they haven't worked with yet. So the model that I think is more common, and you learned this in your own time, is to have a lower barrier offer up front, so we can try you out, so that you're not front loading the cost. You're just kind of really spreading it out over time. And so now what you've landed on is biweekly billing. Can you just talk a little bit about switching from monthly to biweekly billing? I think we've talked about it before on this podcast, but can you just share about why that mattered for you?
Well, the big one was everybody was talking about how great it was because it you got almost a month's billing added in. And we told our members that when we made the change. We're like, this is a way for us to continue to be able to keep the lights on without increasing your pricing. And we only had like one person object to that in any way.
Yeah.
And so I figured that wasn't that big of a deal. Overall, it's been good. I mean, a little bit of like, why do you do this when people first sign up? But they just accept it and go with it. And then I think the biggest thing is that from the financial point of view, you get that month that you would have lost because of the odd numbers of days in various months.
Yeah,
so
that's so great. And I think to your point, Jason, when people convert from this, they often think there's going to be a revolt. And all their clients are going to be so upset because they're changing to this biweekly or weekly billing structure instead of monthly. And it's going to mean it costs more over the course of the year. But most of the time, 1 or 2 people will complain, and that's about it. But I think, it's important for our listeners to understand that if you are billing your memberships monthly, unless you have unlimited, right? If you have unlimited, this kind of doesn't apply to you. But if you have, memberships where people have a set number of visits, then you're pretending like every month has 4 weeks. You're only really billing as if there are 48 weeks in the year, and there's really 52. So when you bill on some weekly schedule, whether it's weekly, bi-weekly, every 4 weeks, you're actually billing for all the weeks in the year. So immediately I think the math comes out that you make an extra 8% on the year or something because you're billing for all the weeks. And for those of you who have bigger teams, there's weeks where there's longer months and you're paying out extra payroll but don't have extra revenue. And so this switching to weekly billing really fixes that. And so I think that's such a great pivot that you made. Go ahead, Jason. What are you going to add?
I'd say another weird thing I've noticed, I don't know if this is typical or not, but I've noticed it creates an extra accountability for the members because they see this other bill go through. So if they've been like MIA or not there as frequently one billing period, they see that other bill go through, like, I really need to get in there. I'm paying for this. And it may sound, maybe I'm making a bigger deal out of nothing, but I've noticed that people are like, oh, and then all of a sudden the billing goes through and I get messages, hey, I need to come in, yada, yada, yada.
Totally. Well, what often happens when people switch to weekly, it actually aligns better with the rhythm of their workouts, right? Because people think about how many times per week do I go, not how many times per month. right? And often our programs are based on a set number of weeks, right? And our schedules come out in like kind of weekly chunks. And so if you can align your program design, whether it's group or person one-on-one or small group, if you can align your program design with when your schedule comes out with your billing, then it all starts to make sense in ways that doing it as a monthly doesn't. It all kind of tracks more clearly that every week I get this many visits and it's consistent from time to time. I think so many things fall into place, at least they did for us when we switched to a weekly billing rhythm.
Yeah, 100%. I really think it was a smart move. It was one of the first big Band-Aids that I kind of ripped off, and I'm glad that I did it because it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, totally. Well, let's wrap things up, my friends, because I think we covered the 4 topics we want to cover, but I'll ask you one final question here, which is, for all of our listeners out there who may be around the same place you're at, which is, maybe 2 years of having brick and mortar business, clearly you've learned lots of lessons over that time. What advice do you have for people who are around the 2-year mark just like you?
Perseverance, get a mentor if you don't have one, get a couple of them, join a community. I think, not to plug Business for Unicorns, but I'll plug Business for Unicorns. I think by far the smartest thing I did was doing this because it's not just the mental power of you and Mark, but also all the other gym owners. I've learned so much from all the other gym owners. Some people in business for 10 years who have like multiple locations even. And it's just huge to have that and not feel like, because you can feel like you're out there in a storm and you have no idea which way is north. And so big, lots of love from me to you guys.
Yeah, thanks for the plug. I promise. I didn't ask him to do that.
Not at all.
No, I appreciate it. I love the analogy, right? Being out there in the storm and just not even knowing which way to point the boat, and that's, you even mentioned that's why you brought on a salaried employee in the beginning, was just kind of feeling a little lonely in the business. And I think that's a real feeling that I hear a lot from business owners. And so I think groups like Unicorn Society or getting a coach or a mentor of some kind can help be really grounding in that way. Just tell me if I'm heading in the right direction. Just tell me if this idea is crazy. And just tell me, what did you do when you faced this problem? I have coaches too. I need people to help me in that same way too. And I find nothing is more valuable to my career than that.
The number of times we've had like one of our calls with all the different owners, and I've gone back and I've gone into my next meeting with Jesse and been like, here's what we're going to do. I had this great idea based off what these guys said, and we're going to try it this way.
Yep.
So like, that's like awesome.
Yeah, it's the power of the crowd there is so valuable. Yeah.
100%.
Amazing. Well, thank you for doing this, my friend. It was so great chatting with you. For listeners who want to learn more about you or find you or Iron Monkey Strength on the interwebs, where can they find you?
www.ironmonkeystrength.com.
Easy enough.
Or Instagram at Iron Monkey Strength. So it should be pretty easy to find us.
Yeah, I love that. And friends, if you're out on Long Island, go stop by. Say hi to Jason and the crew. It's a fun place. Thanks again, my friend. I really appreciate you. We'll probably do this again soon, but have a great week.
Thank you, Michael.
Well, I hope you loved today's podcast, and forgive me, I want to remind you one more time, if you haven't already done so, head over to businessofunicorns.com, click the button, and get your free self-assessment, the ultimate training gym owner report card. I promise you're going to want to dig into this resource and get the support you need, finding crystal clarity on exactly where you need to be focusing to create a life and a business you love.